Justin here from 207 Overland, 207overland.com. In this video, we're going to be talking a lot about diesel heaters. I am currently up at the northern tip of the state of Maine. It is about 17-ish degrees outside. I am in a rooftop tent, and it is about 73 degrees in here. And talk a little bit about how we get that to work, and in regards to diesel heaters, what works, what doesn't work, what's good, what's not good.
So I guess the first thing I should start off by mentioning is that when you're winter camping, especially in extreme cold, no matter how great any reliable source of heat is that you may choose, whether it be a diesel heater or a propane buddy heater or an electric blanket, there is never a 100% guarantee that something couldn't go wrong. So when you're winter camping, always prepare yourself with extra blankets, a 0-degree rated sleeping bag if you're out camping in that cold, because you don't want to be caught in the middle of the night without any way to keep yourself warm. Obviously, when you're in a vehicle, worst case scenario, you can always climb down, get into the vehicle, start it up, and keep yourself warm in an emergency, provided the snow's not so deep that it's blocking your tailpipe. Always want to make sure that's taken care of, but aside from that, always make sure you have a backup. That being said, let's take a look at diesel heaters. So if you go on Amazon and type in diesel heater, you will be bombarded. There are hundreds of them out there. They have exploded in popularity over the years, and they price anywhere from, I've seen them as cheap as $60 to as expensive as a couple $1,000s. I'll talk to you a little bit about the differences between those vast different price points, differences between the models that are out there, and show you what I have and what I found that works, what doesn't work, and some things you should look out for as well. So in front of me, I've got a couple of heaters here. I've got a new one from LF Bros. It's a very nice, very well-made heater. I'll kind of show you a little bit about that in a second. And then I also have a diesel heater here that's a Vevor. It is basically a build-your-own kit. Essentially, you buy the heater and it comes with all the other parts and everything you need, the fuel tank, and then I just put it into a Harbor Freight case. I've had this heater here for, going on 3-4 years now, and then I've had, this one is rather new, and I've had other ones like it since. And yeah, let's dive right in. So obviously, as far as construction, there's pros and cons to both. This is a build-your-own. They do make complete versions as well. This particular one is, I believe it runs for about $125 for the full kit. You can buy a complete case, one like that in the Vevor brand, for as little as $150, even less sometimes when they go on sale. They both work the same, just one you build it, one is ready to go right out of the box. Reason I chose to have this one built into a case is it's just a little bit more rugged, being in the hard case. I wasn't worried about it bouncing around, getting damaged and stuff. But that was also when I was just kind of tossing everything into the back of a Jeep and I didn't really care too much. Now that my packing is a little bit more sophisticated or tight and everything has its place, this works just as well. But both heaters, most any heater rather for that matter, run off of 12 volts as their power source and diesel fluid as the burning combustion fluid. And being that they are 12 volt, you can buy power adapters. Some come with them to go to 110 as well. That is very important because, as you can see, I've got 2 jackeries here. Just to kind of talk about that really quick. Back in the day, it was the case that this jackery, or any jackery rather, the 500 that I have on top, would run any diesel heater you wanted. And you can plug it right into the 12 volt port there without any issue. Over the years, as Jackery and other power station companies like Blue Yeti and EcoFlow came out with new models, what they did is they changed how the battery management system, especially on the 12 volt side, works. So they all have the same 10 amp 12 volt port, but now what they're doing is some of them are more sensitive to what they call surge voltage. So when you fire any diesel heater up, there is a surge voltage. In other words, when it first starts up, it pulls a lot more power when the glow plug is energizing than when it finally stabilizes and just runs normal. So as you can see, running normally right now, this LF Bros heater that I have running is currently running at about 21 watts. And at that power level, this particular Jackery, which is the 2000, will run that for about 45 to 50 hours before the Jackery 2000 needs to be recharged. So that's a long time. So anyway, getting back to the 12 volt side, what we found over the years is that with the new Jackeries, suddenly they weren't working on 12 volts anymore. You'd plug them in, you'd turn on the heater would start up, and as the glow plug ramped up, you'd see the wattage here climb up to 120, 150 plus watts, which the new style 12 volt ports, because they're more sensitive than the old style, just couldn't handle anymore. So it would trip it, it would shut it down, it would immediately cut the power, which is bad for the diesel heaters anyway. So the workaround, the solution for that is simply to get a 110 adapter to go from 12 volt to 110 and plug it into the 110 on the Jackery or whatever power station you have. That will run it, no questions asked, without any issue whatsoever. I will tell you just another quick note before we get back into the heaters. Power stations, power bricks, anything electric, the battery technology is sensitive to extreme cold temperatures. So if you've got a Jackery, a smaller one like that, or another way to power your diesel heater, what I would recommend doing if you're camping in the extreme cold is to buy yourself a cord long enough so that you can take that take that Jackery rather, right up into the tent with you. That way the Jackery stays warm. It's good for the battery. It'll run it longer. We were on a camping trip recently and we found out the hard way that the technology in a lot of these power stations, when it's extremely cold, especially below zero like we were getting about half the life you typically would with a Jackery that was running at normal room temperature. So keep that in mind. Okay, so getting back to the heaters itself, the Vevor one, this is advertised as an 8K unit. I'll get into that in a second. But it's got the cord, the controller, they come with an air filter and an exhaust pipe as well. So on the bottom here, you'll notice there's a couple of ports. This side here is for the exhaust. This side here is for the air inlet, and this, of course, is the fuel line. Basically, it just loops back into the internal tank here. Important thing to note, this is where the heat comes out. On the opposite side, this is where the air intake, fresh air intake is. That's getting turned into the hot air, which pushes up into your tent. This is the intake for the LF Bros. This is the outtake for your tent. It is very important on these to always make sure that your air intake and your exhaust are nowhere near pointing at each other. Basically what happens is if the intake brings in exhaust, you bring potentially harmful fumes into your tent and could potentially not wake up in the morning, which is bad. So keep that in mind. If you ever see a all-in-one design out there on the internets where the air inlet and the exhaust are pointed right next to each other, by design, stay away from it. That is dangerous. So, sizes of heaters. As I said, this is an 8K heater, or at least that's how it's advertised. This is a 5K heater. They also come in 2K and 4K versions as well. Basically, the higher the K, the higher the number, the more output, the more heat output it has. But again, that is all relative to the space that you're trying to heat. I will tell you that the lowest end, a 2K heater, will heat your rooftop tent. In fact, it won't only just heat it, it will cook you out of it just fine. So keep that in mind when you're purchasing. It is always better to run a lower heater on high than it is to run a higher end, like an 8K, a 5K or an 8K heater on low all the time. Reason for that is it just it burns off any soot and anything in the combustion chamber. If it's on low all the time, that stuff can build up over time, and it just means more maintenance in the long run. So keep that in mind. Now, 5K versus 8K. I will let you all in on a little secret. 8K, 99.999% of the time, 8K is just a marketing term over the 5K. There is no difference between this 8K heater and the 5K that is inside this LF Bros here. In terms of heat output, they are identical. If you were to put a heat gun and IR thermometer on the output here and the output here, I have found them to be identical. 8K, a real genuine 8K unit would be, if you can find them, 1.5, so almost 2 times the size of that heater, and it's going to cost a lot more than just a couple $100. So keep that in mind when you're purchasing. Now let's get into the LF Bros. I really like this heater a lot. We've got quite a few people in our organization that run them as well, quite a few members that run them as well. They are a very well thought out, very well built unit. I love it. I have 0 complaints. You know, with anything, there's always something you could find. Like, for example, there's a 12 volt output here because we're converting, you know, 110 to 12 volt to power the heater. But there's also a 12 volt port on this side as well, if you wanted to plug straight into like a cigarette adapter. So why they have a bare wire connection on one side and a hard wire on the other, I'm not sure. Why don't they just use one? But that's very minor. It uses all metal design. The fuel cap is probably one of the most nice things about this. Every diesel heater I have ever purchased, every diesel heater I've ever run across, they all leak out of the fuel cap. It's just the design of them, and I'll show you what I mean. I've put a piece of zip tape over this so it doesn't leak out the basically the pressure hole on the top, and I have a pressure valve here instead. But even with that being the case, so you're threading on to the tank here, and over time they stretch, they deteriorate. You can never actually fully tighten it down. So as tight as it will go, if I were to tip this over right now, it would leak fuel, and I hate that. Whereas this one, this is an automotive grade venting fuel cap that actually threads inside. So as you're screwing it on, just like it would be in your car, you hear the click. That is completely sealed. You can tip that unit on its side. You can tip it completely upside down. It will not leak, which is huge, especially if you guys store them inside of a vehicle as you're driving. So keep that in mind. Operationally on this thing is pretty simple. You've got a connection here for your controller. This is the controller here. Very simple, very easy to use. You can leave this by the heater, or you can run it up into your tent and have, you know, temperature control up there. It also does come with a wireless remote. So if you don't want to use this, if you just want to turn it up and down, it does come with like a little keychain remote as well. This is very similar. It has a controller, has a little remote. They all work the same way. A lot of the really new brands out there are coming with like iPhone apps as well, which is pretty neat too. You can control everything right from your phone, but either way, this is fantastic. So plug it into power, plug your vent into your tent. This particular tent, this roof nest has ports on either side, specifically for diesel heaters. If you don't have one, you can go right through the side of a zipper inlet. So you connect that, you just attach your exhaust, turn on your power, and then turn it on, and then select your power level, and you're good to go. The internal tanks on both of these on high will run an entire night before it needs to be refilled. And when I say an entire night, I mean between 6 to 7 hours, sometimes upwards of 8 on high. But again, that is on high. On high will cook you out of the tent, especially if you have well, any rooftop tent really, unless you're running like an alu cab actually on a truck, like a topper, and you need to heat the bottom space as well, in which case I wouldn't go with a 2K, I would go with a 5K. But if it's just a rooftop tent, this style could be the clamshell, could be a pop-up, a 2K will work just fine in almost every circumstance. So again, on high will last you most of the night, no problem. On low, internally, it could last you an entire weekend, a couple of nights of running it while you're sleeping at night. I do have a couple of Rotopax diesel carriers here. If I'm running it on high every single night for a weekend, basically one Rotopax will run the entire weekend for one unit without issue. So right now with diesel prices the way that they are, $3-4 a diesel keeps your tent toasty warm all weekend. So it's very economical to do it. It's dry heat. It's not wet like it would be with like a buddy style heater. So it takes care of all the condensation on the inside. It's just perfect. I couldn't imagine a better way, a more comfortable way to stay warm. So this entire time I've been talking, the LF Bros has been running. As you can hear, it's very quiet. You don't hear the typical ticking that you do from a normal diesel heater, the fuel pump. That is one thing with diesel heaters, is they do have a constant. I don't mind it at all, but some people do. It's a tick, 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 tick from the fuel pump. And with most of the LF Bro ones, you don't get that. With the Vevor and the lesser expensive ones, you certainly do. So keep that in mind. This one is louder. This one is very quiet. Differences in price. So again, this was about $125 worth of heater, and then the case was separate. $125, $150 will get you into be it a Vevor. The other popular brand right now is H Gallery. $125, $150 will get you into an all-in-one all day long. I've had this for, like I said, about 3-4 years. It still runs. This one here, the LF Bros start off at about $200 to $225. And so there is a little bit of a price jump there, but I find it to be rather insignificant in comparison to the upgrades that you get. Internally, they use a better fuel pump. Internally, there's models of these that use a much better glow plug as well. As you can hear, it's quieter. It's more dependable. I've never had an issue with this, and I have had issues with this one. Vevor, again, they're cheap and they're great, but if you look down on the inside, it does leak diesel occasionally. No matter how much I've taken it apart and cleaned it and tried to keep up on it, it does leak diesel occasionally. So keep that in mind when you're purchasing. Diesel is not a flashpoint, instantly combustible fuel like gasoline would be, but this one does leak. This one has not leaked. I've never had any kind of a hiccup with it as well. I did notice that as far as power draw is concerned, the Vevor does take more power to run than the LF Bros does as well. So your power stations, your batteries, your truck battery, whatever you're hooking these things into, they might go a little bit further with a higher quality heater. So the LF Bros, as I said, about $225 is what they start at. And they do have higher end versions as well. The higher end versions will get you, like I said, that upgraded glow plug. There is one out there that has basically a larger heat output on it as well. But again, when you're going up there in price point, you're paying for the upgraded components. And this one comes with a great warranty as well. Whereas this is kind of you're dealing with Amazon's warranty and it's fuel related, so they don't really like to return it. Sometimes they'll work with you, and if you're within that window, and they'll fix you up. But this is great. This is kind of the luck of the draw. Again, I've had it for a long time. It's worked, but it's not without issues. One other thing I would highly recommend looking at is no matter what heater you get, be it an all-in-one or build your own, A lot of these heaters now, so this is the inlet where it brings fresh air in, heats it, sends it up into the tent. I would always look for a heater that has an exposed inlet instead of being, you know, unexposed behind a grill somewhere. In other words, this is actually sticking out here, or there's an exposed inlet here. And the reason for that is in absolutely extreme cold temperatures. I'm talking like, you know, if you're going camping well below freezing, below zero especially. So right now, this is heating outside air, pushing it up into the tent. As I said earlier, it's cold, but it's not that cold. So the inside of the tent is toasty warm. If you have a larger tent or a camper or an alu cab, or it's extremely cold out, what that air inlet that is exposed allows you to do is to take a second hose and run it up into the tent for your inlet. So basically, you're heating air, you're recirculating it, heating it again, and pushing it back up into the tent. It's a more efficient way for the heater to run. You will get hotter air up there as a result. Again, not that these aren't plenty hot as they are, but it will be that much better. So keep that in mind. I think it's a very important thing to think about, or consider at least, especially if you're in extreme cold temperatures. One other thing regarding the heaters I want to talk about real quick are the heater hoses themselves. So when you buy one of these, they typically come with that. It stretches out to be maybe about a foot longer than it is, but this is the style hose that it comes with. These are very good, but obviously this doesn't do you any good at this length getting up into the tent. So a lot of people, what they end up doing is they'll buy one of these, like a dryer vent from your hardware store or on Amazon. I have had nothing but trouble with these for a couple of reasons. They're not as rigid, so they tend to droop and bunch up as you're going up into the tent, and any unnecessary bends or droops will cause potentially issues with the heater overheating. You want a direct line into the tent. They're not temperature rated. So in other words, they might work fine for your dryer at home, but the type of heat, the level of heat that these things put out, I have had these melt right in two. So I'll wake up in the middle of the night wondering, hey, where is all my heat gone? And I've found that the hose has melted right in two. So most of them are this style. Actually, you can kind of see right there, it's starting to split. Some of them have this aluminum interior on it, which is a little bit better, but I found that under high temperatures they still do deteriorate and melt over time. The best thing out there that I have found is to look on Amazon and get a longer version of this. They are hard to find, but you can find them, and that's what I have here, and I have another one there that I can stretch out for the inlet as well. Construction on these is obviously a bit more rigid, but they are built specifically to handle high temperature outputs from the diesel heaters. How you can find those on Amazon is if you just look up the diameter in metric. So 75 millimeter air heater hose. That will trigger a couple of results, and you're basically looking for the same thing that came with it, but longer. There's another alternative out there that's kind of like a high temperature silicone that is flexible like the other style that I showed you as well. That works, but again, most of the ones that are like that do not work. Don't rely on it, and they do break down, and you get that burnt plasticky smell in your tent with you. It's a bad situation all around. All right, so getting back into the tent so I can warm myself back up and also show you what the inside of the tent looks like. So those are the duct openings that come up into the tent. This is where the heat's coming out, and this is where you would hook up a second one for the air inlet to recirculate it as well. All right, so that just about wraps it up for now. We would have had one more heater to show you guys and test out as well. I want to save that for a later date, but just to tell you or fill you in really quickly about it, we have been in communication with a company called Sparks Overland. They make a
really nice diesel heater. It comes in a full metal case. It's one of the best quality and most well thought out heaters I've ever seen. It is up there a little bit more as far as price point is concerned, but again, this is kind of one of those things where you get what you pay for. If it's something that you are going to use a lot, in other words, you're winter camping frequently, I would definitely consider checking them out. But again, that's for a later date, and talk to you a little bit about those at a later time. But for now, just remember the LF Bros is one that I am absolutely happy with. I think it is a fantastic heater at a great price point. I think that the small jump in price between $125 heater to a $215, $225 heater is well worth it for the additional peace of mind, the safety as well, and it's just better built in my opinion. So yes, you could buy $60 heaters and replace them all day long and not spend $200 up front, but do you really want that heater to stop working when you need it the most, when you're out camping in the middle of the night, especially when your family's involved? I don't think you do. I definitely don't, so keep that in mind. Back to the tent itself. Diesel heaters, by their nature, the way that they are constructed, are extremely safe as far as your sleeping area. So the combustion chamber is separate from the actual heating chamber, so you're never crossing fumes. You're never, as long as your exhaust and your air inlet are separate, like I showed you earlier in the video, you don't ever have to worry about bad fumes coming in through this vent and poisoning you in the middle of the night. This is a very clean heat, a very dry heat, which is important for winter camping, and it's a very hot heat as well. Most tents are just simply not built for, keeping heat in the winter, so you need to combat that with just excessive amounts of raw heat, and diesel heaters are your ticket to do just that. One other benefit, just going back to the dry heat thing about diesel heaters, if you've ever woken up in your tent and you've seen condensation on the walls, or you're winter camping and there's ice right here, you're warm because you're in a 0-degree sleeping bag, but the inside of the tent has got water all through it, frozen or otherwise. Diesel heaters suck the moisture right out, leaving you with a dry tent. So even when I am camping in marginal temperatures in the summer, especially be it next to the ocean where things are very moist, I do have a heater with me, and the reason for that is if it rains overnight and you wake up and your tent is wet, turn the heater on. If you've got condensation on the inside, turn the heater on. Within a half hour or so, it will suck all the moisture out and you'll be able to put away a dry tent and be ready for the next night's adventures. Well, there you have it. Thank you for letting me take up a little bit of your time to talk about the diesel heaters. They make winter camping absolutely enjoyable, and we do a lot of it as 207 Overland is concerned. We've got a bunch of winter camping trips, and if you've never been, consider it. It's a lot of fun, a lot funner than you would think if you've never tried it before. But thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.